After the death of my husband, the rights to the inheritance belonged to my daughter and me. So my brother, Jack, can't claim any of it. However, Jack didn't understand what it meant. Sarah and I are all set to move. We're just about ready to move in. I agreed to sell our house because I was told we could get your brother-in-law's house. But this is not what we heard. It was a loud, shrill voice. Perhaps because of that, Abby inside the house might have noticed what was happening at the entrance. I could hear her coming down the stairs from the second floor, wondering what was going on. I cannot involve my daughter in this. Moreover, I want to avoid any further disputes with my husband's family. Above all, there's also the issue with our house. While I was thinking about this, Abby had already reached the entrance. Spotting her, Jack seemed to have found someone he could persuade. With a happy look on his face, Jack began to elaborately explain how pitiful their situation was and how they could be saved. Seeking sympathy. At first, Abby listened with a skeptical look, but gradually her expression turned pale. And finally, she spoke up. "Uncle, don't you know about?" I stopped Abby from saying something more. I didn't want to make the situation worse. Moreover, it was clear they wouldn't listen to anything we said at this point. Understood. Please feel free to do as you wish. My name is Cindy. I'm a 44-year-old who works at a local travel agency. Being married with a daughter, I'm also doing my best as a homemaker while working. My husband, who was the same age as me, was a very gentle and calm person. He never got angry or made a fuss. Moreover, he was the type to immediately offer help when someone around him needed it. A caretaker by nature. I have always loved this about him since we were dating. We met over 20 years ago at a social gathering. I had a prejudice that social gatherings were filled with frivolous, noisy, and selfish people, so I wasn't keen on participating. A friend brought me there as a filler somewhat insistently. I wasn't enthusiastic, so I went with minimal makeup and casual clothes. At the venue, I planned to just eat and stay out of the way. Among the attendees, one man caught my eye. He was serving salad and attending to the drunk people with dedication. His considerate behavior made a good impression on me. Despite little interest in the opposite gender, I mustered up the courage to talk to him, and surprisingly, we hit it off. He readily exchanged contact information with me and even arranged our next meeting. Even upon meeting him again, he remained the wonderful person I first met. With support from those around us, his proposal led to our marriage. Our marriage didn't turn into one of those horror stories where the man changes for the worse. It was peaceful. Soon after, our daughter Abby was born. She is the most precious thing to us. He was thrilled with our first child, his usual charming smile even brighter, almost brimming with joy. Returning to work shortly, we shared household and childcare responsibilities equally. We respected each other and managed to raise our child smoothly. Marrying and raising a child is challenging. But my husband's kindness has always been my salvation. That's why, from Abby's birth until now, we've been able to spend peaceful days together. Our beloved daughter turns 20 this year. I might be biased, but I think Abby has grown into a kind and considerate young woman. Just like her father. She talks to her classmates without discrimination, is well regarded by her teachers, and even greets elderly people on the street. Like her father, her excessive kindness worries me. So far, there have been no major issues. And Abby has been able to continue attending college without any problems. Abby is still commuting from home to university, but I expect she will become independent in a few more years. I thought that life would continue as usual with my husband and me after that. My daughter's coming-of-age ceremony had just ended peacefully at the end of January, and I was relieved when a major incident struck our family. What happened to you? My husband suddenly collapsed at the entrance, right before leaving for work. I felt a little off about him today. He himself said he felt a bit breathless right after waking up. But other than that, he was his usual self. I was preparing our usual breakfast and leisurely getting ready for work as well. I hadn't thought it would be serious enough for him to collapse. In my confusion, I hurriedly called an ambulance and accompanied him to the hospital. He had suffered a heart attack. How could this happen? I was so confused, I hardly knew what I was saying. It might have been close to a scream. Dad. Abby, who had been out overnight, rushed back, gasping for breath. In the cold hospital corridor, my daughter and I sat on a sofa, desperately praying for my husband's safety. The doctors seemed to do everything they could, wisely. Despite their efforts, my husband quickly passed away. I felt a great despair when the doctor with a somber face came out of the treatment room. Don't leave me. Abby kept stroking my back as I cried in the hospital room. The warmth of her hand warmed my frozen spine. Mom, I'm with you. Her voice was gentle, like my husband's used to be. I always thought of my child as a child, no matter how old she got. But seeing her trying to comfort me, despite her own grief, made me realize how much she had grown. Perhaps it was due to Abby's encouragement that I managed to shift my feelings slightly afterward. Thanks to Abby, I was also able to arrange the funeral smoothly. At the funeral, I received many words of consolation and sympathy from my husband's relatives. I continued with the ceremony of parting with my husband, grateful for each word. The ceremony was hard, and I nearly broke down many times during the funeral. But thanks to Abby and those around us, I managed to finish it. Not only Abby and my husband's relatives were concerned about my depressed state. During the funeral, as I was mentally vulnerable, my parents reached out to me, worried. They told me to come back home. It may not be the right thing to say in such a situation, but seeing my state, they thought it would be safer for Abby and me to temporarily stay at my parents' house. I was too sunk in grief over my husband's death to even consider it. Moreover, it had been over 20 years since I got married and left home. I wanted some time to think, so I declined my parents' offer at that time. And so, I quickly became known as a widow. Being a widow might give the impression of financial instability. However, I worked as a full-time employee, so I had less worry about income. Abby was a top student, which meant her university tuition fees were partially waived, which helped a lot. However, a new problem arose shortly after the commotion. It emerged while Abby and I were settling the inheritance and other aftermaths. It was the first time I sighed over an issue caused by my late husband. What should we do about living from now on? As someone who deeply loved my husband, the shock was immense. Yet, I understood that my daughter, Abby, and those around us were always on my side. I decided to confront this issue head-on and think it through. Determined, about 2 months passed when suddenly, a car parked in front of our house without warning. It was my day off, so I noticed that. I was surprised, but went to the entrance. I recognized the dirty, damaged car and its number plate. The car was recklessly parked close to the garage in the garden. Likely due to this, the bricks of the flower bed I had made were slightly chipped. The situation clearly showed that the car had entered at a considerable speed and was parked forcefully. Jack, what brings you here? The unexpected visitor was Jack, the brother of my late husband, with his long, damaged blonde hair looking even more faded than it was at the funeral. I hadn't noticed at the funeral since he was dressed in mourning clothes. But now he appeared to be wearing a very worn-out t-shirt as his everyday attire. As he got out of the car, he said something shocking right away. Cindy, I'm taking over this house. Pack your stuff and leave right now. I couldn't understand what he was talking about. This house was built with the savings my husband and I had put together after getting married. It was not Jack's family home. Jack, who had been independent by the time I married, had never lived in this house. Not even as a guest. Moreover, other than for ceremonial occasions, our households had little to do with each other. After my husband's death, the rights to the inheritance belonged to my daughter and me. So Jack, being the brother, had no claim to it. However, Jack didn't seem to understand this common sense. I can understand about Abby, but it's only natural that I, as his brother, have more rights than a sister-in-law who isn't related by blood. Jack continued, explaining his current situation. He said he had accumulated too much debt and had to sell his home, leaving him without a place to live. He insisted he had the right to inherit part of his brother's estate. That reminded me. Jack was known to have a gambling problem, which my kind husband had criticized. I hadn't paid much attention during my husband's funeral because I was too distraught. However, my husband had mentioned that Jack had even sought financial assistance from his family. I believe it was the day after a family memorial service that only my husband attended. Jack apparently begged for money from not only his parents, but also his brother, my husband, and other relatives, which was quite shameful. My husband never spoke ill of anyone. So I was surprised and a bit scared to hear him speak like this about Jack. It was a completely different character from my husband, who was a bundle of kindness and naivety. This was all because my husband, as the eldest son, was raised very strictly, while Jack, who was frail as a child, was seldom scolded or reprimanded. The in-laws never intended to raise them differently. But perhaps this led Jack to become an adult who couldn't discipline himself. That's what some relatives suggested. Now, Jack, with a menacing look, was standing before me. Even if you say such things suddenly, this house is. I was bewildered by this demand, which was neither sensible nor legal. However, Jack cut off my words and continued. Sarah and I have finished preparing for the move. We're just ready to move in. He forcefully pushed the conversation. After a while, another person got out of the car, a middle-aged woman walking in high heels. Though we had no interaction outside of ceremonial occasions, I immediately recognized her as Sarah, Jack's wife. I had heard from my husband's relatives that she had a habit of buying lottery tickets worth nearly $500 every chance she got. Her excuse was always to make up for my husband's losses. The entire family was furious, calling it wasteful. Sarah joined the argument, backing up Jack. I agreed to sell our house because I was told we could have your brother-in-law's house. This is not what we agreed on. It was a loud, shrill voice. Because of that, Abby inside the house must have noticed what was happening at the entrance. I could hear her coming down the stairs from the second floor, wondering what was going on. I cannot involve my daughter in this. Moreover, I want to avoid any further disputes with my husband's family. Above all, there's also the issue with our house. While I was thinking about this, Abby had already reached the entrance. Startled by the sudden appearance of her uncle, she couldn't hide her surprise. Seeing Abby, Jack must have thought he found someone he could persuade. With a happy look on his face, Jack began to elaborately explain how pitiful their situation was, and how they could be saved, seeking sympathy. At first, Abby listened with a skeptical look, but gradually her expression turned pale. And finally, she spoke up. Jack, don't you know? I stopped Abby from saying more. I didn't want to escalate the situation further. It was clear they wouldn't listen to anything we said at this point. Understood. Please feel free to do as you wish. While restraining Abby, who was shocked, I informed Jack and his wife that we would vacate the house within a month. They seemed pleased, believing their demands had been met. Obviously, moving out immediately, both physically and mentally, was challenging, so we requested some time. This seemed to improve Jack and Sarah's mood, as their proposal to take over the house was accepted. They agreed to leave for the day, and I returned inside with Abby. As soon as the front door closed, Abby frowned and said, "Mom, even saying such a thing." Abby was worried, but I had a plan. I quietly shared it with her. Listening attentively, Abby agreed to cooperate with the plan. We decided to leave the house voluntarily. I would return to my parents' home, as they had suggested. As for Abby, living in an apartment for one was the decision, since commuting to university from my parents' house would become impractical. Though I wished she could stay with me, I understood that dropping out of university was not an option. Moreover, she had dreams and goals she wanted to achieve at university. I had always communicated the challenges of living alone, but she seemed determined. So, I immediately called my parents. Abby quickly started looking for student apartments on her smartphone. My parents agreed to take me back, and luckily, we found an available apartment for Abby right away. Additionally, finding a moving service for both of us was surprisingly easy due to it being an off-peak season. Despite the abruptness of our move, everything went smoothly. Thus, Abby and I left the house filled with memories of my husband. One day, after settling into our new lives, the phone rang at my parents' house. Not recognizing the number and hesitant due to the prevalence of scam calls targeting the elderly, I reluctantly answered after it kept ringing. "Cindy." The moment I put the receiver to my ear, a booming voice came through, recognizable as Jack's yelling. "They said they'd call the police if we stayed in your house." "What's this all about?" Jack sounded panicked, confused to the point of incoherence. After calming him down, I listened to his story. Somewhat calmed, Jack explained that after we left, they moved into the house as planned. Initially, everything seemed fine as he and Sarah settled in. However, soon an unknown real estate agency showed up, claiming the house was listed for sale and threatening to charge them with trespassing if they didn't leave. They even had a master key. When Jack protested, saying there must be a mistake or it was a scam, the agency threatened to call the police. I sighed deeply after hearing the story and responded, "Yes, the house has been sold. It should be listed as a second-hand home by the real estate agency, as they said." Jack was stunned on the other end of the call. I could hear Sarah asking what was going on in the background. "What are you lying for?" he shouted again. I wasn't lying. Had indeed sold the house. The contract to vacate had been completed just before Jack and Sarah's visit. The issue discovered after my husband's death was his debt, unknown to me until we began the inheritance proceedings. Though aware that inheritances could include debts, I never imagined it would affect us so directly. My husband, before he passed, seems to have become a guarantor for an acquaintance's debt. I heard from a friend of my husband that as soon as this acquaintance secured the loan with my husband's backing, they vanished without a trace, leaving my husband with the responsibility to repay. Documents demanding payment from the creditors were discovered among his belongings. Whether my husband had willingly signed to help his friend out of goodness, or was coerced into it, remains a mystery shrouded in darkness. Given my husband's kind-hearted nature, the former seems more likely, though this act of kindness ultimately became a heavy burden. Faced with a substantial amount of debt, the solution wasn't straightforward. Even though I was working and Abby's tuition wasn't exorbitantly high. Upon consulting with my parents, they suggested, "Why not sell the house and come back home? We're always here to welcome you." This was a reiteration of their previous advice during my period of grief following my husband's death. After our family became one person smaller, I began to feel more positive about selling our home, which now felt too spacious. I realized I couldn't dwell on the shock forever. With my daughter, Abby, now a college student and an adult, I thought it might be a good time to start anew. That's why I agreed with my parents' suggestion. Whether Abby would come with me or live on her own wasn't decided until just before the move. By the time Jack and Sarah came to claim the house, the sale had already been finalized. In essence, the house was no longer mine at that point. This was not what I was informed about. I tried to discuss the ownership of the house with you at that time. Jack and Sarah, having not listened to our side of the story, insisted the house was rightfully theirs. Anticipating such a scenario, I had already decided on moving back with my parents and confirming Abby's intentions for her independent living, vacating the house without further discussion. This was the subtle plan I had devised. Reflecting on it, a more thorough approach to the house transfer could have prevented this mishap. However, Jack and Sarah's carefree attitude, without proper legal documentation or confirmation, led to their abrupt eviction under the law. In the end, their reliance on the real estate company was futile, and they were nearly reported to the police, narrowly avoiding a criminal record but forcibly removed. Having already disposed of their property, they had nowhere to return. They attempted to seek refuge with Jack's parents and relatives, burdened with their belongings. However, their well-known financial recklessness, particularly Jack's gambling addiction, led to a unanimous rejection from the family, including my in-laws. Attempts were made to seek help from us, but lacking knowledge of my whereabouts or Abby's university and living arrangements, they found no aid. This ensured we had no concern about being pursued by them. Faced with desperation and no apparent solution, Jack and Sarah perhaps resorted to squandering their last resources on gambling and lotteries, only to face utter defeat. Despite their looking down on a homeless lifestyle, or living modestly on government or local assistance, they couldn't abandon their aversion to it, resorting to loan sharks and stubbornly repeating their gambling and lottery habits led them back into a pit of debt. This time, dealing with loan sharks meant they couldn't easily dodge their responsibilities as before. This information came to me during an apology session arranged by my late husband's parents, the in-laws. They expressed their deepest regrets about the entire ordeal, indicating they had lost track of them and hadn't heard any news since. Even the in-laws couldn't trace their whereabouts, receiving no calls or pleas for money lately. This silence somewhat reveals their current plight. It's heartbreaking to see my husband's family fall into such dire circumstances. The in-laws' grief must be even more profound. They lamented overindulging their younger son due to his frail health in childhood, which inadvertently led to this crisis. Moreover, they mourned the tragedy caused by their eldest son's kindness, which ultimately burdened their granddaughter. They even went as far as to offer a deep bow of apology to Abby and me, affirming they would never assist Jack again, regardless of the circumstances. Honestly, at first, I had some concerns about my in-laws who were at the center of these events. However, after seeing the sincerity in their eyes, I realized I still wanted to maintain a good relationship with them going forward. They prioritized the well-being of Abby and me and handled everything so thoughtfully, which I am extremely grateful for. Although my husband is no longer with us, Abby and I promised to visit his parents regularly. Abby adores both my parents and my husband's, so she's very happy about this. As for me, moving back home meant I had to quit my job. While it's not impossible to commute to my daughter's university from there, I'm also of an age where pushing myself too hard isn't wise. So, I've decided against enduring long commutes. My colleagues and superiors reached out to me after my husband's death and the sale of our house, but their concern is unnecessary. I've found a job that allows for remote work, leveraging my previous experience in a similar field. Now, I'm working from a room in my parents' house. Working from home is still somewhat unfamiliar, but I'm gradually getting used to this new lifestyle. Abby and I keep in touch regularly. Despite the uncertainties of starting anew, I have confidence in my daughter. She's diligently juggling household chores, studies, and part-time work, learning from friends who are also living on their own. From this experience, she's learned that excessive kindness can sometimes harm oneself. We need to take care of ourselves first. It means you need to take care of yourself more, Mom. During her recent visit home, she shared these encouraging words. Hearing this, I felt moved by her maturity and reassured. Abby, glancing down, shyly shared. My goal now is to find someone wonderful. Someone who can have the kind of relationship you and Dad had. Toe, you think so? Exchanging looks, we couldn't help but smile. I know the future may hold many challenges. But with the support of the now reliable Abby, our parents, and those around us, I'm determined to live resolutely. I want to lead a life that would make my late husband proud. I want a child of my own too. In a sarcastic tone, my husband Patrick said. I finally couldn't take it anymore and spoke up. What? What are you talking about? Isn't it right in front of you? I had been harshly criticized by Patrick for not being able to have children. Even now, he's holding my sister's baby in front of me, as if to make a show of it. What? Patrick's mouth gaped open. Despite all the evidence, he intends to feign ignorance. I won't let him. I'll push you into hell myself. My name is Janet Cohen. I'm a 25-year-old housewife. All right, it's done. I was preparing dinner in the kitchen. When I opened the large clay pot, the refined aroma of spices wafted through my nose. I tasted the stew I scooped from the pot. The spiciness is okay, the meat is tender okay, yes, it's exactly to his liking. Just as I sighed in satisfaction. I'm home. My husband Patrick came back. I went to the entrance to greet him. Welcome back. Today's dinner is your favorite stew. As I took Patrick's bag at the entrance and was about to go back to the room. Hey. Patrick grabbed my shoulder. I felt a piercing gaze on my back. How did it go? Today was the day, right? I gasped at his words. My heart throbbed, and I started to feel dizzy. Answer me. I swallowed and opened my mouth. It didn't work out. This month too, the baby didn't come. I clenched my hands tightly. Seeing this, Patrick sighed heavily. Again? Why can't we have a child? Making stew as if you're trying to appease me. I'm sorry, but don't make excuses. All my friends have kids right after they get married. Thinking of names, buying baby clothes, they seem so happy. I want children too. But we've only been married for 3 months, there's no need to rush. Patrick stared at my face. Then, as if he had thought of something, he snorted through his nose. You're not incapable as a woman, are you? Go see a gynecologist or something. Patrick snatched the bag from me and left for his room. I covered my face with both hands. I too want a child. To carry a new life and feel the love for it. To be moved by every step of my child's growth. But perhaps I'm not qualified for that. My parents disappeared before I was fully aware. They vanished, leaving us behind. Left behind were me and my twin sister. I grew up without knowing my parents' love. Can I really become a proper parent? It always worries me. But I can't give up. I truly want a child, so surely, someday, God will grant us one. I'll keep my spirits up and wait for that day. Next month is our long-awaited wedding ceremony. It's a bit late, but that only makes me more excited. All right. Smile, smile. I went to call Patrick for dinner. Today is Patrick's birthday. I decorate the cake and prepare a present. As I wait for Patrick's return, the doorbell rings. It's rare for someone to ring the bell. I hurriedly open the door. There stood a woman. Her face and style were like that of a movie star. She smoothly brushed her glossy black hair over her shoulder. Excuse me for intruding. It was my twin sister, Valerie. We are dizygotic twins. Seeing my sister, who looks nothing like me, I opened my eyes wide. Valerie? What's the matter? What, I just came to visit. But today is Patrick's birthday, right? I wanted us to celebrate it, just the two of us. Didn't I send you an email? Suddenly realizing, her sister clasps her hands in front of her chest. Sorry. I forgot. I just wanted to see you so badly. I've been feeling lonely since Janet got married. Ever since I got married, my sister has been visiting unexpectedly, not weekly, but once every 3 days. This has left little time for my husband, Patrick, and me to spend alone. And we've hardly had a proper conversation recently. However, whenever I hear my sister say she's lonely, I find myself unable to say anything. We are the only family each other has. Hey, sis. I'm giving you this bag. I haven't been using it much lately. I opened the paper bag my sister gave me. Oh. This is from a famous designer. It's fine. I usually give these to my friends. This time, it's for you. Take this and go out to dinner with friends. Oh. But you don't really have friends like I do, huh? Oh, look at this. The party I had recently. She shows me a photo. In it, my sister and over 100 of her friends are enjoying an elegant dinner. I chuckle softly. Valerie, you're such a social butterfly. You're the complete opposite of me, really amazing. You work hard, have money, and you have a boyfriend, right? Well, yeah, that's nothing special. She laughs proudly. I can't help but give a wry smile. Huh? Then, she notices the table and freezes. She bursts out laughing, holding her stomach. Wait, did you make this cake yourself? Yeah. Is it weird? Everyone knows bought cakes are more appreciated. You really do thankless tasks, poor sis. She leans in, smiling at me. But, that's what's cute about you. She grins brightly. Then, suddenly, her eyes sparkle with excitement. Oh. I actually have some news. I'm home. Patrick returns from work. We stop our conversation to greet today's star. As I'm cutting the cake, Patrick and my sister start watching TV and getting overly excited. This actress is so pitiful, huh? Got married and couldn't have kids. And by the time she finally did, she was 40. How miserable. Really. They seem to get along well, often gossiping about celebrities. They're like a real couple. Oh, look. Baby pictures. My heart skips a beat at her words. Babies are symbols of happiness. I think giving birth is a mission since I was born a woman. A woman who can't have children isn't really a woman. I get it. Valerie, we really see eye to eye. We do have a lot in common. I serve the cake silently. Hear that, Janet? Patrick teases me. Then, my sister suddenly covers her mouth, realizing. Sorry. I didn't mean to talk about you. I was talking about something else. At that moment, my sister looks at me and smirks. It's an expression I've never seen on her before. I sense a definite malice. The reason my sister comes to visit is that she's lonely without her sister. That's why I couldn't turn her away. But, is that really the truth? After the party ended and my sister went home, I received a message on my phone. I'm actually pregnant. Remember I said I had news? Of course, I plan to get married. Sorry for being happy first. Family being happy should be a joyous occasion, something to celebrate. Yet, something dark grows within me. Time flies by. Today is the long-awaited wedding day. We chose a small local church for the venue. It's somewhat modest, but I wanted to save as much money as possible for the future children. After getting dressed in my wedding gown, I'm relaxing in the dressing room. But that piece is shattered in an instant. Bang. The door swings open with force. I'm here. Congratulations, sis. Startled, I turn to look at my sister. But then, an even more shocking sight unfolds. Valerie, that outfit. What? What is it? I swallow hard before speaking. You can't wear white at a wedding. Yes, my sister was dressed in pure white. She puts her hands together in an exaggerated gesture of apology. Sorry. I really tried to avoid it, but I just loved this dress too much. Plus. She smiles mischievously. It looks good on me, doesn't it? This dress. Proudly striking a pose, my sister tilted her head as if looking down on me, eyeing me up and down. Is that handmade? It looks more like a normal dress than a wedding one. It doesn't have the fluffy shape typical of a wedding dress. Yes. I have a favorite designer who made it just for me. Sewing in lots of embroidery of my favorite flowers. My sister smiled with just her mouth. Oh, how nice for you. Embroidery usually gives off an old lady vibe. But well, it suits you very well, sister. So, it's all good, right? Ah. Thank you. I grimaced. Hey, it's time to go. Patrick said bluntly as he entered the dressing room. Not even a simple compliment. I sighed deeply. The ceremony ended without a hitch, and the reception began. And now, a speech from a family member. My sister stepped up to the microphone. Instantly, the men in the venue started murmuring. Beautiful. Gorgeous. I wish I could marry someone like her. Their gazes skipped over the dress, entangling with her beauty and figure. Ahem, hello. I'm the bride's sister, Valerie. There are a few empty seats today, but thank you all for being here. The reception was 30% absent. I had prepared seats for my sister's friends, but none of them showed up. As you can see, my sister doesn't have friends, just a mere 8 people. She always stays in on weekends, munching on snacks and tapping on her smartphone. Isn't that pitiful? Laughter trickled from the venue. I felt my blood run cold. Valerie, what are you saying? It's a wedding, a reception, you know? But I love my sister just the way she is. Patrick, please make her happy. My sister flashed an angelic smile. Applause erupted. I didn't even want to think about for whom that was meant. After the reception, I called my sister to the dressing room. Valerie, what was that about? Those empty seats were for your friends, right? You made it sound like it was my fault. I pleaded desperately, but my sister just smiled awkwardly and patted my head. Don't be mad. If you worry about this, life will be hard from now on. My friends said it was a nice ceremony. They both acted as if nothing was wrong. Why, how? Laughing at my panic, they both just laughed out loud. I stood frozen, unable to comprehend this inexplicable reality. Soon after, my in-laws arrived. They consoled me and scolded Patrick and Valerie. I felt a bit relieved, but suspicions about the two of them began to surface in my mind. Little by little, but surely, a sense of unease had been building. 10 months passed. Patrick, my in-laws, and I were driving to a certain place. Patrick, at the wheel, was visibly excited. Really looking forward to this. You feel the same, right, Janet? I remained silent, looking down. We arrived at my sister's house. Patrick and the in-laws started fussing around the living room sofa. So cute. Glad he was born healthy. At the center was my sister, with her baby. She ran over to me, holding the baby. Look, sister. Isn't he cute? He looks just like me. My sister was radiating happiness, yet her eyes widened. Seemingly enjoying my reaction, her mouth twisted in amusement. Congratulations. I murmured softly, looking down. Wow, so cute. Can I hold him? Of course. Patrick held the baby, his eyes sparkling. Babies are really the symbol of happiness, huh? Look, Janet. Isn't it?
Yeah.
What's the matter, jealous of Valerie? That's why you're not getting pregnant. Patrick, holding the baby, looked at me with a smirk, as if to flaunt. I want a kid of my own too. At that moment, something snapped in my head. What? Isn't he right in front of you? Huh? Patrick's mouth fell open in shock. What? The in-laws froze, eyes wide. I pointed at the baby in Patrick's arms, making sure everyone could hear every word clearly. Right there. Your child. The adorable baby of you and Valerie. The air turned icy. Patrick's face went pale, and Valerie's face contorted. I pulled out photos from my bag and scattered them on the floor. The photos clearly showed Patrick and my sister heading into a hotel together. I know everything about Patrick and Valerie's affair. As I declared this, my sister burst out laughing. Stop it, this must be some kind of fake, right? Don't be stupid. The stupid one is Valerie. I suspected something fishy between you two. So I installed surveillance cameras at home. And then, on a day I was away, you two. I pulled out my smartphone and played the video. The footage of Valerie and Patrick's intimate moments started playing in the living room. Valerie's face turned beet red instantly. What is this? Stop it. Stop it now. She lunged at me like a madwoman. After snatching the smartphone from me, she threw it against the wall with all her might, stomping on it repeatedly. The smartphone screen shattered loudly, emitting strange noises. I watched my sister with a cold gaze. It's useless as Valerie. My sister, who was tearing up the photos, looked up at me when I spoke. Useless? What do you mean? Then, a furious shout filled the room. Patrick. My father-in-law had grabbed Patrick by the collar. You betrayed Janet? With her own sister. You monster. And you even made a child. How do you plan to take responsibility, you idiot son? Tears streamed down my mother-in-law's face. Patrick trembled under the accusation from his parents. Wait. We don't even know if the child is mine and Valerie's. Janet is just trying to make me look bad by saying whatever she wants. DNA test. Huh? I declared loudly. A DNA test will reveal whose child it is. Why don't you go to the hospital? Though Patrick was lost for words, he stubbornly pleaded with his parents. Look, Janet can't even get pregnant. A woman who can't bear children isn't fit to be a wife, right? Are you out of your mind? The one who's unfit as a spouse is you, for having an affair. But, that's... Patrick avoided eye contact. Seeing this, My in-laws sighed heavily and turned their gaze away. You have something to say too. Why did you do this? Betraying your family is a grave sin. Valerie flinched. It's not my fault. The bad one is Janet. She glared at me, grinding her teeth, with a face like a demon. It's your fault for stealing the person I loved first. What? I had no recollection of such a thing. After our parents left us, I always acted strong. But you were always so mopey. It was so annoying. Yet, my first love chose you over me. Said he liked Janet. Felt sorry for her and couldn't leave her alone. That's when I vowed. If you wanted to be pitied so much, I'd make you the most pitiful of all. First, I made you taste loneliness. I kept saying our parents are gone. It's so lonely, isn't it? Then you grew up to be a gloomy kid with no friends. Poor thing, huh? Next, I made you feel inferior. Made sure you knew I was amazing and you weren't. Giving me high-end items and bragging about her many friends were all to make me feel inferior. And probably, stealing Patrick was part of it too. Now you see, right? You're beneath me. Betrayed by your husband, hated by your sister, you're the most pitiful woman in the world. Valerie laughed triumphantly. But I felt nothing. I am pitiful? So, Valerie thinks that way. Got it. She probably expected me to be a loser. She just stood there, puzzled with my calmness. But I don't care about that anymore. Now, I just hate Valerie. I loved you so much, and you've been manipulating me like this all along. It's terrible. Absolutely terrible. So, I'll return everything you did to me. All of it. I mimicked my sister's laugh. Then, Valerie backed away as if she had seen a monster. Was my face that scary? Look forward to it, both of you. I left the house alone. Months have passed since then. Patrick slapped the divorce papers in front of me and left. He was undoubtedly heading to Valerie's place. Today, I attended a wedding. It was cold, so I wore a thick long cardigan over my dress, making sure the dress underneath couldn't be seen at all. The church was one of the largest in the US, with more than 100 attendees. There were so many people, I couldn't even get a clear view of the bride and groom. The same must be true for the bride and groom. They made their entrance, and applause filled the air. The priest began the vows. Do you, Patrick Cohen, take Valerie as your wife, to have and to hold? In good times and bad, in wealth and in poverty, in sickness and in health. Today was Valerie and Patrick's wedding day. I learned about the wedding a month after that showdown, when Valerie announced her pregnancy and marriage to Patrick on social media. The post also mentioned the wedding. They prepared quite quickly. Probably, they had been planning this even before my wedding was arranged. That's why Valerie didn't invite her friends to my wedding. I didn't make invitations for Valerie's friends. She said she'd create a group chat and check the attendees herself. I thought it was my sister's thoughtfulness wanting to lessen my burden with the wedding preparations. But now that I think about it, she probably never made that group chat. She lied about everyone attending. No one was invited to the wedding. That's why no one came. Such a simple answer. Looking back, it seems like Patrick also invited only acquaintances with whom he had a shallow relationship. Before and after our marriage, I was never introduced to Patrick's close friends. Whether Patrick had been connected with my sister before our marriage or it was just bad timing, the reason will forever remain a mystery. But this much I can say. They wanted this to be their first wedding. They wanted to erase all the time they spent with me. I couldn't forgive that. What was all the time I loved Patrick for, all the time I spent for Patrick for? Destroying one person's life and then becoming happy by themselves, I couldn't forgive that. I reaffirmed my decision for revenge. Once the wedding ceremony concluded, the reception began. Perhaps due to the crowd, it was a standing party, and the venue was bustling. I stayed hidden in a corner. Now, we have a special video message from the groom's parents who couldn't make it today. Please take a look. The staff announced proudly. What? Valerie and Patrick were taken aback. The venue's screen lit up, showing my in-laws. They were smiling, but their eyes held the sharpness of predators hunting their prey. It's finally starting. I watched the screen and chuckled softly. Patrick, Valerie, congratulations on your wedding. Congratulations. In the video, they exchanged smiles. Thank you to everyone for coming today. As a token of our gratitude, we'd like to give you a gift. Excited murmurs rose from the crowd. What is it? A present? The mother-in-law continued. It's a gift of words. Now, over to you, honey. Sure, leave it to me. He tightened his previously relaxed expression, turning it into something fierce. There's the bride, right? She's Patrick Cohen's affair partner. And that affair partner is her own sister-in-law. Do you understand what we're saying? That's not a pair of fresh newlyweds there. They're monsters who had an affair. We will never acknowledge this marriage between these two. And henceforth, we are cutting off all ties. Stop the video. Just as Patrick's scream echoed, the video abruptly cut off. But it was already too late. Shocked by the video, the attendees were at a loss for words. Patrick stood up and shouted. Everyone. That was just a joke from my parents. A bit too stimulating, I guess. The crowd began to murmur. Yes, that's right. That was just... As Valerie grabbed the microphone to start explaining, I snatched it from her. It's all true. With just those words, I discarded my cardigan, revealing a white dress beneath. A year ago, I wore this dress to marry Patrick. You remember, right, Patrick? Patrick, turning pale, was frozen in place. Seizing the moment, I took out something from the envelope I was holding and scattered it around the venue. They were photos of Valerie and Patrick's affair and photos from my wedding with Patrick. The copied photos were enough to reach all the attendees. Looking over the tumultuous venue, I took a breath. I did it. I really did it. After everything was over, I slumped down in a half-daze. Suddenly, someone grabbed me by the collar. Looking up, Valerie was staring at me with eyes wide open as if they might pop out. Why are you here? I didn't invite you. I didn't even tell you the place or the time. I couldn't help but laugh at how flustered she was. What are you talking about, Valerie? You told me yourself. On social media. A hint, was it? I figured it out right away. Valerie's marriage announcement on social media included the wedding date, clear as day. August 18th. A day for Couples Day. And with every update on social media, she began to talk in detail about the venue's atmosphere and her meticulous search for it. Probably meant as a dig at me. I'm having such a wonderful wedding. Not like yours. But that became my clue. A simple search online and I found it. Social media can be scary, huh? But, how did you get into the venue? Your name wasn't on the list. I sighed, giving her the obvious answer. Because I'm the bride's sister. The person at the reception knew my face. So, they let me in. They wouldn't turn away the bride's sister just because her name wasn't on the list, right? You mean, that video was you? You brought it in, saying it was a surprise, keeping it secret from me? We didn't invite the two of them. That's right. My father-in-law and mother-in-law sided with me. They came to my house, apologized, and said they couldn't stand to see Patrick and Valerie happy. So, we all came up with today's plan together. I pointed at the venue and laughed. Look, everyone's leaving. Seeing the departing guests, my sister's face turned pale. Wait. Please. Her friends turned back to her in unison. Oh. Valerie. Why are you leaving? Those photos. The photos might be fake. But we don't want to be associated with someone who might have had an affair. Being seen with you would lower our value. Value? But we're friends, right? Nice of you to say that after luring us with high-end goods. Well, we were friendly with you for that reason too. So, we helped you, right? Taking group photos to show off to someone. That's. Let me say this last thing. You see us as numbers, don't you? The more, the better. You don't care about us as individuals. It must have hit home. Valerie bit her lip hard.
Goodbye,
Valerie. The friends left. The venue fell silent, leaving only my sister sitting on the floor. Patrick holding his head, and me, strangely calm. Well then, Valerie, see you. I left the venue. A few days after my sister's wedding, I was relaxing at home. Knowing well that the peace was only temporary. The doorbell rang. I checked the peephole and opened the door. Janet. Patrick lunged at me. How dare you pull such a ridiculous stunt? Ruining our happiness. Unbelievable. You evil woman. Valerie appeared behind Patrick and shoved me. I hit the wall and slid down to the floor. But I didn't care. I murmured in a cold voice. You two never learn. But it's good you came to me. What? Valerie crossed her arms and looked down at me. Patrick, check your email. There's important information. What? Right before opening the door, I had sent an email. I made sure to attach photos and videos. Photos and videos? You're doing that again. Patrick reluctantly checked his phone, his face turning increasingly angry. He turned to my sister, shoving the screen in her face. Valerie. Who the hell is this guy? Displayed were photos of Valerie, dressed provocatively, holding hands with several older men. The videos showed her entering and exiting hotels with them and receiving money. Sugar daddy dating, right? Valerie. I stated matter-of-factly. You always buy high-name stuff, Valerie. You wanted to show off to me, but that's impossible on a regular salary. So, I did some digging. Turns out, playing detective can be quite fun. You. Valerie fumed. Next to her, Patrick hung his head. Hey, Patrick. Did you do the DNA test? Huh? I told you. A DNA test would show if the child is yours and Valerie's. There's no need for that, because... Patrick gasped, realizing a horrifying possibility. Patrick. I spoke clearly. Whose child is it, I wonder? In that moment, Patrick gripped Valerie's hand tightly. Facing her directly, he whispered. Valerie, did you betray me? After all you did to seduce me, even the child. What are you saying? That child is yours. You doubt me. Of course. How can I trust a woman who does sugar daddy dating in secret? You trust Janet over me. Then you'll agree to a DNA test, right? We're going to the hospital tomorrow, okay? Patrick clung to her hand, desperate to believe in Valerie. That's, well. Her hesitant response was all the proof needed. Patrick raked his hands through his hair. Damn it. Thought having a beautiful wife would be something to brag about. But look at this mess. You sisters have ruined my life. Patrick stomped around, lashing out at furniture and appliances before storming out of the house. Valerie, pushed aside by Patrick, sat on the floor, head bowed. Valerie. I looked down at my sister and teased her. So, how do you feel now? Valerie twitched in response. Once the child's test comes back, Patrick will probably leave you, Valerie. And now, you've lost all your friends too. Valerie glared at me fiercely. I have friends. Not everyone has left me. Then what kind of messages did you receive? Huh? She exclaimed in surprise, evidently not expecting such a question. After the ceremony. Did anyone worry about you? Did anyone ask for your side of the story? Did anyone encourage you? Valerie uncomfortably averted her gaze from me. I received messages. Even when Valerie tried to humiliate me with that odd speech. Even when Patrick and I divorced. Sure, I only have 8 friends. But each of them worried about me and comforted me. Despite having many times more friends than I do, Valerie, you weren't worried about by anyone. Valerie's teeth gritting could be heard. Abandoned by the man you stole from me, and now friendless. Valerie, that's pitiful. It was a heartfelt statement. Valerie suddenly raised her head and raised her voice. Pitiful? Me? What are you talking about? That's just your perspective. I'm not pitiful. I'm beautiful, have a great figure. And men dote on me because I'm worth it. The one who's pitiful is you. With nothing to show for yourself. I responded emotionlessly to Valerie's angry shouts. You're right. Then let me say this. Valerie, you are not above me. Not before. Not now. Not ever. What? You know, I've always praised you as amazing, haven't I? For having so many high-name items, for having so many friends. You wanted me to admit that you were superior, right? Yes. So what? The thing is, I've never once thought you were amazing. What? I glanced at the bag Valerie had thrown to the floor. I have no interest in brand name goods. And I'm not bothered by having a few friends. I've never aspired to have many friends. That's my value system. So Valerie, you've never had the upper hand over me. What? That's a lie, right? You've always been jealous of me, said I was amazing. I said those things to make you happy. Because we're family. You don't dismiss someone who's proudly sharing their achievements with you as unimportant. In other words, I was flattering you. You took it seriously. What? But. Because I loved you, Valerie. We were the only family we had, and I didn't want to lose you, so I was careful with my words. Valerie screamed with a trembling voice. You're lying. You were distressed because you couldn't have children. That doesn't matter to me anymore. I sighed as I responded. During my time with Patrick, I was obsessed with the idea that I had to have children. But life isn't that simple. There are many different people and many ways to live a fulfilling life. I'm no longer tormented by my desire for children. Then, what about me, what I did? Valerie began to tremble uncontrollably. Unable to stand on her own, I dragged her outside.
Goodbye,
Valerie. I closed the door behind me. Afterward, Valerie and Patrick divorced. According to the results of a paternity test, Patrick was not the father of Valerie's child. The news of Valerie and Patrick's affair spread quickly. Considering they invited 100 people to their wedding, it was inevitable. Both Valerie and Patrick lost their jobs and struggled to find new employment, living a difficult life on day labor. I moved away to start a new life elsewhere. In a place without Valerie and Patrick, I intended to forget everything and start over. Today, I was going to visit a friend who just had a baby. Carrying a gift for the baby, I rang the doorbell. My friend, opening the door, had the happiest smile. "Congratulations." I sincerely offered my congratulations.